is because of lobbying pressure of the detergent industry. And the sad thing is that the detergent industry in India, 80% is controlled by 3 big multinationals who all follow the low phosphorus rule in North America, in Europe, but refuse to do it in India just for the sake of company profits and environment be damned. So I've been fighting that if we cannot have a law for limiting the phosphorus, at least let us have labeling of the phosphorus content so that individually aware citizens can choose to purchase low phosphorus rather than harmful high phosphorus, cheap surf area, that kind of detergent. And now I've switched completely to herbal natural ones. Better India and so many websites are offering this kind. There is another thing besides this 90 phosphorus and the 99% germ killing. There is something called triclosan. You may have seen it on the label, hand sanitizers now in COVID times and so on. Triclosan is a microbe killer which does not decompose at all. It does not break down over time. It remains like that as a permanent biocide. So when it enters our, our hand washing or our washing machine water, goes into the environment, even if it goes to a sewage treatment plant, it passes through and enters our lakes. And there it kills all the microbes which would normally digest the falling vegetation, the water hyacinth which dies and sinks down. The microbes which are supposed to digest that and convert it into CO2 and H2O, they can't do their work. So it just remains as a sort of sludge, and our lakes get shallower and shallower and shallower. And I really wonder if we clear all our Rajkalvis also, but if it is just connecting instead of one deep pond to another deep pond, now if the Rajkalvis are connecting one shallow saucer to another shallow saucer, will that really solve our flooding problem? Deconcretizing, of course, is a must. And in Tamil Nadu, they did flood control by every 50 meters having a recharge pit along all the highways and roadways. This is like a 1 meter cube pit filled with gravel so that the rainwater could go in and soak into the soil instead of flowing only on the surface. And it made a huge difference. We need something like this. There are town planning policies in the West where any large layout or campus is required to have either a detention pond or a retention pond. A detention pond is something like maybe a low-lying football field or cricket pitch or something like that, so that if there is a flood, there is room for that much water of that campus. Supposing for a week, the maximum rain would be 2 inches. So then 2 inches by the number of acres of that layout, they have to have a basin which can hold that much water. And then there is a narrow opening, so the water goes out slowly and not like a flood. So once the heavy downpour is there, this detention basin fills up and releases the water slowly over 3-4 days without flooding when the immediate downpour has ended. And a retention basin is a shallow basin which always has some water in it. Some ducks, sailboats, something like that, recreational. And there is enough, 3/4 of it to absorb the peak rainflows. Other things they do, you may have seen all those beautiful calendar pictures of blue lakes in Switzerland, Germany, and so on. In Germany, they have a policy that every town above 20,000 population has to compulsorily remove the phosphorus from their wastewater in their sewage treatment plants. It's available technology, but STPs choose to take a shortcut, and there is no strict enforcement, even if there is a rule, which I think India does not really have. So if we can capture out the phosphorus, and the pity of it is that there is a global shortage of phosphorus, the phosphorus fertilizer which is required on the land. Urea gives you vegetative growth, and the phosphorus gives you more fruiting and so on, flowering and fruiting. So there is a global shortage of phosphorus. I think Morocco is the main global supplier. So if we can get the phosphorus out of wastewater, including human waste, because our bodies also secrete phosphorus, if we can capture that phosphorus and put it onto the land as fertilizer, it will be a win-win situation. This is the prevention side that I'm talking about. Limit the microbicides, the bacterial killers in our sanitizers. Many countries have banned triclosan. You can Google it and see. But it is there in so many cosmetics and other products. India needs to be following available knowledge and also limiting these harmful items. So this is on the prevention side. On the other prevention side, I really don't know how much we can do to stop the deliberate debris filling of the lake edges so that the lake becomes land, and then a builder can say, this isn't a lake, I'm going to build on it, and so on. They actually pay people to bring them debris and put on the lake shore. Although we have a construction and demolition waste recycling unit at Dodajala. They crush the concrete, and concrete is actually cement, sand, and stones. So if you crush it and get rid of the powdery cement part, you can be left with M sand, which is called manufactured sand. That costs about 1/3 of natural river sand and will save the excavation of river bottoms. Because if we scrape out all the sand for illegal sand mining, which is now banned on paper but not very well enforced everywhere, it really interferes with the life of the river and the recharge of it also. So the CND plant at Dodajala, it makes M sand or it makes aggregate. It will have a little cement attached to it. And all this can be used everywhere except perhaps in the important structural roof slabs or columns, which are critical. But everything else, the in between filler walls for plastering M sand and so on, is perfectly all right. So how do we do this? If we can note down the lorry numbers of the people whom we can catch dumping debris on lake shores that are within our visibility and report this, hopefully the city can be moved to act against them. And fencing is not really the solution because people manage to break fences. On the curing side, so much garbage is thrown again into rivers and ponds and so on. that is a tragedy where we are really killing our own Mother Earth, as Professor TVR spoke about. But there is a wonderful technology started in the Netherlands. If you can Google the Great Bubble Barrier, it's a beautiful, simple solution in a river at a 45-degree angle. They lay a perforated pipe which uh, creates a curtain of micro bubbles rising to the surface. So floating plastic on the top, as well as plastic in the different layers, it all gets somehow diverted by the 45 degrees to one corner where it can be harvested and recycled. And they say the beauty of the bubble barrier is that fish can swim through the bubbles. It doesn't affect the aquatic life or spawning or anything at all. So that company isn't ready yet to come to India, but we can develop something similar. I wonder how many of you have heard of floating islands. There is a company called Ocean Arcs, and they create floating islands of vegetation with long dangling roots. And they put an air pump, which is either solar powered floating on that floating platform or on the land, a pipe which rests on the bottom sludge and very slowly releases air bubbles so that the bottom sludge is disturbed and little particles rise up past the roots. And all the roots act as what is called a fixed film bioreactor, some place where the digesting microbes can hang on and digest the organic matter that goes floating up to the surface. It rises up and spreads, and the air filter gives you continuous slow circulation, and this is natural. There was a lake in Massachusetts where they actually desilted, deepened the lake just over a 2-3 year period by having these floating islands of vegetation at intervals. So there is so much technology available. Whatever is in our power to do for a local pond or a company where we work or an organization we head, it's worth doing. So there are opportunities for all of you in your homes and also in your future careers to make a difference to save our wastewaters. I'll take some questions now if anyone is interested.
Very nice, simple solution and prevent house.
Well, there are small, tiny, I think 1 centimeter long gambusia fish. If you can put that in any stagnant waters or ponds, that will eat up the mosquito larvae. So it's a good natural mosquito repellent. Another thing is, you can have 100 or 1,000 baby mosquitoes from 1 tablespoon of water. So all coconut shells or broken, plastic cups or this or that lying around, anything which can retain rainwater for 3-4 days will be a breeding ground for mosquitoes. So we just need or tires, which are kept like this and the bottom is filled with stagnant water. We have to think and look around wherever we see stagnating water, try and avoid it. For years, I have been urging in Bangalore that all the tender coconut vendors, they they will just give you the tender coconut water and throw the shell. That shell also is a huge breeding ground for mosquitoes. So the shell, the Nariyalwala should be required if he wants to do business. He must cut it in 4 quarters, because even with a half coconut, there is enough water for mosquito breeding. But quarters, the shell can dry easily. It can go as fuel for brick kilns or anything else, and it won't retain water for mosquito breeding. The best solution, of course, is window netting, netlon or stainless steel mesh in a frame, and a spring door so that they don't come in through the front door. In Africa, they are controlling, have gone on to a completely different track. In Africa, they are controlling malaria by medicated bed nets. There are mosquito nets which are made of a special fiber with pesticide inside that slowly permeates to the outside, and any mosquito sitting on that net will die. And plus the net is supposed, but very few people want to be sitting inside a mosquito net all the time. So in Africa also, they put the net on the bed and they all sit around and chat outside the netting. What has been found is if this medicated bed nets are fixed on the windows and as a door curtain, that itself acts like, you can say, a huge netting enclosure for people. Unfortunately, India doesn't allow free sale of this. You cannot buy a medicated bed net if you choose. The government decides who it will give it to, at what rate, and probably 40% on that. And the public is, in India, is restricted from access to this.
Any other questions? So thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful talk.